No one remembered how many times Jake Miller had eaten lunch by himself, but that day, for the first time, he sat facing the fence. Across the street, a little girl stood holding her belly, her face coated in dust, eyes fixed on the sandwich packet in his hands. Jake paused for a moment, then split the sandwich in two, handing the larger half to the girl and keeping the smaller part for himself. She accepted it with both hands shaking, whispering, "I thank you," before dashing off as if scared someone might snatch it back. Right then, the manager's voice thundered from behind Jake. "What the hell are you doing? Don't encourage those beggars, bring one, they all come." A few crew members chuckled, others just looked on, staying silent. Jake didn't reply, just lowered his eyes and kept eating his piece of the dry, crusty sandwich. The break ended in silence. No one joined Jake. He went back to work with dust clinging to his fingers, sweat marking his back, and his thoughts still resting on the fence where she had stood. Jake was no stranger to silence. Being raised by a father who used fists more than words had taught him when to talk and when to survive. His rough hands and quiet presence made him nearly invisible, just another worker moving metal and stone. But something about today was different. The girl's eyes had stirred something unnamed. "Miller," the foreman barked that afternoon, "you're falling behind on Section B. What's the delay?" Jake wiped his forehead and pointed out a structural flaw the engineers had overlooked. Instead of thanking him for catching the mistake, the foreman sneered, "That's what inspectors are for. Just do your job." As the sun dipped behind the site, the workers drifted out, laughing, making weekend plans. No one asked Jake to join. No one noticed when he lingered, hoping to see the girl again. She didn't return. On his way to the small room he rented, Jake stopped by a corner shop. He checked the loose coins in his palm, then stepped inside. When he came back out, he carried 2 wrapped sandwiches. One for dinner, one for tomorrow, just in case. Have you ever seen someone punished for doing what's right? Too kind, maybe? If you believe a simple sandwich could shift a life, stay with us, because what follows will move you even more. That night, Jake had just reached his room when a text popped up from an unknown sender. "Thanks for earlier. Someone would like to meet you." No name, no location. He assumed it was a joke until 20 minutes later when the front desk phone kept ringing. "There's a red car blocking the site gate. Can you come down and check?" Jake stepped outside and froze. A shiny red Mustang GT was parked across the entrance. A woman, around 50, stepped out, dressed in a worn military shirt, hair pulled back sharply, eyes scanning with quiet intensity. Next to her stood the same girl from that morning, now cleaned up, still close to the woman, but looking at Jake with the same unreadable stare. The woman reached out her hand. "I'm retired Colonel Sandra Lee. This is my granddaughter. She's been receiving psychological therapy since losing her mother. She doesn't accept food from strangers, but today, she ate your sandwich." Jake shifted uneasily. "I just didn't want her to go hungry." Sandra gave a slight nod, offering him an envelope. "We don't repay kindness with cash, but tomorrow I'll come back and take you somewhere your empathy will matter." Jake paused before accepting the envelope. Inside wasn't money, but a picture. The young girl, younger than now, smiling beside a woman in a military uniform. "That's my daughter," Sandra explained, noticing the confusion in his eyes. "Mira hasn't spoken more than a few words since the funeral 3 months back. Until today, when she came home and told me about the man who shared his meal." Jake glanced at the photo, then at Mira, who now stood partly hidden behind her grandmother. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said quietly. Sandra's face stayed stoic, but her tone softened slightly. "Loss comes with service. The harder part is seeing what it does to the ones left behind." Around them, other workers started gathering, curious about the sleek car and the stir it caused. The manager pushed forward, his face flushing when he spotted Jake Miller. "What's happening here?" Sandra turned, evaluating the manager coolly. "You must be the one who shouted at my granddaughter today." "I didn't," the manager began. "Not directly," Sandra cut in, "but loud enough that a grieving child heard her hunger was an inconvenience to you." The manager's defensiveness faltered. "Look, we can't have people loitering around the job site. It's a liability concern." "Interesting," Sandra replied. I'll keep that in mind tomorrow when I arrive with members of the Veteran Outreach Program. She turned back to Jake. Be ready, 7 a.m. As they drove off, the Mustang's engine roared deliberately louder than before. The manager spun toward Jake. What did you do? Who are they? Jake gave a small shrug. Just someone who noticed something you didn't. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He kept replaying Mira's eyes in his mind. The photo of her mother. The way Sandra had spoken the words Veteran Outreach Program like it was both a promise and a warning. He wondered what the next day might hold. For the first time in years, something stirred inside him, not quite hope, but its softer cousin, curiosity. The next morning, while Jake was on shift, the Mustang returned, this time flanked by 2 military jeeps. The entire site paused in confusion. The manager ran out. We don't have any dealings with the military. You people need to move along. Sandra didn't say a word. She simply walked over to Jake and motioned for him to get into her vehicle. They drove him to a veteran reintegration facility, a center devoted to helping wounded service members and children who had lost parents in the line of duty. Sandra explained, "We need someone to oversee our labor recovery model, guiding veterans in rebuilding soft skills. Would you be willing to give it a try?" Jake looked confused. "I'm not trained. I don't know how to teach or talk to people." Mira stepped forward from behind, for the first time taking Jake's hand and saying, "But you knew how to give half your sandwich without worrying about keeping your own part." That line quieted the entire room. Sandra gave a firm nod. The Department of Defense quickly approved Jake for 3 months of basic instruction. A clip of Jake sharing his sandwich, captured by surveillance cameras, circulated within military circles. Comments poured in. "We need more folks like this, not ones just pretending to care. He's not military, but his actions show the same honor." The building site where Jake had worked started getting backlash for how he was treated. The manager eventually called, offering Jake his old job. He declined. What Jake didn't realize was Sandra hadn't met him by chance. After Mira mentioned a kind worker, Sandra pulled footage from across the street. She didn't just see Jake share a sandwich. She saw him give away the bigger half and keep the smaller piece. Then she ran a background check. What she learned was unexpected. Jake Miller, 34, son of a Vietnam vet who died by suicide when Jake was 15. No record, no social accounts. Just a man who lived unseen yet chose kindness when no one was around to notice. The center's director initially objected to hiring a civilian with 0 qualifications. "These people have deep trauma," he argued. "They need trained professionals." Sandra simply played the clip again. "Find me someone more qualified," she challenged. "Someone who gets sacrifice without needing applause." The director reluctantly agreed to a trial. Jake's first day was tense. Veterans with burn marks, prosthetics, and distant gazes eyed him with doubt. "This is Jake," Sandra said. "He'll help with woodworking." "What unit?" someone called. "He's not military," Sandra answered, "but he speaks the same tongue." A tall man with an artificial leg smirked. "What tongue is that?" Sandra looked to Jake. He stepped up, uneasy with the spotlight, and simply said, "The language of giving enough to share." That afternoon, Jake set up the workspace. He didn't give directions. He just began crafting a basic bench. When a young vet slowly approached, Jake silently offered him a sanding block. No pressure, no talk, just room to feel useful again. Within a week, 6 vets came daily. By month's end, there was a waiting list. The construction site called 3 more times, offering higher pay to bring Jake back. On the 3rd call, Sandra answered. "He's building something more important now," she told them. "He's rebuilding people." "Have you ever seen an act of kindness so pure it left your heart aching?" Type soul touched. 1 month in, Jake became the official lead of the labor recovery program. He didn't say much, but every day he split his lunch in 2, just in case someone new showed up and needed a piece to share. Mira, the little girl, slowly regained her health, started drawing, and began speaking more. One day, she drew Jake a simple picture, a sandwich and a Mustang. In shaky, childlike letters it read, "Thank you for being kind when no one saw." Jake had no words. He carefully folded the drawing and tucked it in his chest pocket, where he used to keep his mother's birth record. No medals needed, just the quiet knowledge that he didn't turn away that day. The center began to change under Jake's humble leadership, even as counselors and psychologists continued their crucial therapy work. Jake offered something else, a place where value wasn't measured by titles or speech, but by what someone could build with their hands. One morning, a former Marine who hadn't spoken in years brought Jake a cup of coffee. No words exchanged, just a nod of acknowledgement between two men who knew that sometimes presence mattered more than dialogue. Sandra watched quietly from her office as the woodworking program expanded into metal crafting, then automotive repair. The waitlist grew. The success stories multiplied. "What's your method?" a government official asked during a tour. Jake looked uneasy with the question. "No method," he finally replied. "They just need to feel like they still have something to offer." The official scribbled notes about progressive therapy and silent communication models, missing the simple truth of what Jake had created. A place where the broken could mend broken things, and in doing so, start to heal themselves. Half a year after Jake began, he received a letter from the Department of Veterans Affairs. They wanted to replicate his program across the country, with training modules, certifications, and formal guidelines. Sandra found him staring at the letter during lunch. "You don't have to answer today," she said. Jake nodded, then did what had become routine, split his sandwich in half and handed her the bigger piece. Sandra smiled, recognizing the meaning behind the quiet gesture. "They want to turn this into something complex," Jake finally said. "And you believe it's simple?" Jake looked toward the workshop where veterans were crafting a table as a group, Mira nearby, drawing. "Not simple," he corrected, "just human. Not everyone has a lot, but everyone can still give half of what they do have." Jake wasn't eloquent, not great with words, but one quiet action, done when no one seemed to notice, changed everything. A little girl rediscovered trust. A grandmother found her faith again. And a man, once considered faceless, was now known as the one who rescued with a sandwich. If you ever think kindness must be seen to matter, this is your reason to keep doing what's right. If you believe even a small act can stir someone's soul, subscribe to this channel. Here, we share the forgotten stories society overlooked. Quiet but powerful stories, because some heroes never stop giving. "Don't teach those beggars bad habits," the supervisor yelled when he spotted the worker handing half his sandwich to the fragile girl outside the fence. The man stayed quiet, lowered his head, and resumed working. That night, the entire job site was thrown into confusion when a bright red Mustang blocked the main gate. Who had driven it there, and why?